Showtime.
Showtime. Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Tea and Coffee with Paula and ASMR for you in the morning.
We were watching something last night on that visual adventure, a YouTube channel, Visual Adventure, I think it is. Something along those lines.
Something like that.
Yeah, really interesting channel. He covers, the kind of the creepy stuff out there, and ASMR was on it last night.
Yeah.
Does that do anything for you? Does that tickle you?
No, I can be quite sensitive to sound, and I find that I find that quite creepy. Doesn't float my boat.
I'm just baffled at some of the rules YouTube had to put in place of what sounds were not allowed.
Yeah. It was
funny. But yeah, good morning, everybody. Nice to be here with you all in higher spirits today. It's my third hour of being awake because I'm dealing with, because Paula can sleep through almost anything.
That's me.
I'm dealing with a friend that's unwelcomed in our trailer. So Paula, also known as the cat of the family, is going to be on top of this one.
Yeah. No, I give it the weekend at most.
We should have it go meow, not meow. What does a mouse make?
Squeak.
Squeak, 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 squeak. There was a lot of money being made in the ASMR world. Holy smokes.
Well, also if you're female and lift.
What's that mean? What's that mean?
Well endowed. Well endowed.
Displayed.
Yeah, and that's even that.
Peacocking.
Yeah, I would say that. Or peahenning.
Peahenning. That's right. Gosh, you're a fact checker, real time.
Pot calling kettle black.
I'm white, but okay. I'll fact check you on that one too.
Yeah.
But good morning, babe. Nice to see you.
Yeah. Good. Glad you can make it. Yeah. Sorry, everyone.
We're a little bit giddy. We got the coffee. We got the tea. No, it's not spiked or Spanish or French or anything like that. But yeah, after 3 hours of getting things ready, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited with our guest, Leighton Grey. He's one of the good ones out there, fighting hard. The subject matter sucks because Christianity is under attack, from churches to radio stations to streets, all over the place. Pastor Arthur Pawlowski would testify to that one. So yeah, Leighton did a post, and I'm like, oh man, because I know the people behind it. They're good people. Christian TV, Truth Talk, I believe it is, or Talk Truth Talk. It's one of the two. Good people behind it. And we'll get into it more with Leighton, but their attempt to purchase a radio station in order to take their TV, which they've had a license for the longest time, material to the airwaves, starting in Saskatchewan, was denied. And it was denied because they would not agree to, admit, or even lie about whether or not they would have DEI programming as part of their stuff. And because they wouldn't commit to doing DEI programming, denied. And this isn't speculation. This is what was written by the CRTC. And the CRTC also highlighted that they know that they're violating the rights for freedom of expression and religion, but they have self-proclaimed themselves the ability to execute Section 1, the notwithstanding clause, which thanks a lot to those that put that in there, those that abuse it. And it's very disturbing that a Christian TV, which has a license to broadcast, can't bring their material to a radio station because they refuse to even lie. They could say, sure, yeah, we will, but don't. They won't even do that. No, they say, no, absolutely not. Yeah.
Well, I can't wait for DEI to DIE. But see what I did there?
I heard what you did.
No, but it's true. I believe that is the way things are meant to be heading. A lot of these forced programs and equity and things like that is meant to be calming down. Like, there's nothing wrong with ensuring, yes, there's good, safe work environment and there's no discrimination, sure. But for it to be forced upon you to implement certain policies and procedures that will discriminate against a certain group to appease, I would say would be more accurate word, another, is wrong.
Well, I think that's a slippery slope, though, the no discrimination. Like you just highlighted there that you're okay with that. but that leaves the door wide open. Who defines discrimination? What is discrimination? What can you be discriminated on? That opens that door completely. I think merit-based is a type of discrimination, and absolutely, you should be doing that. I've been an employer. I've hired. I don't care sex, gender, there was no such thing as gender back then, but I don't care about the sex. I don't care about the race. I don't care about the religion. These are not things that came up. I cared about what they can do.
Work product.
Right, the merits. But that's out the window now. And I saw critical race theory being introduced into the paralegal program in the Law Society of Ontario, because and others in my class said they didn't have to do this, but the Law Society of Ontario had me go through a check your privilege program as part of my continuing development requirements, and it wasn't optional. I had to do it. My license was being threatened if I didn't do it, and it was very clear that it was critical race theory, because it said flat out, because you're white, you will intimidate people, and you have to accommodate and adjust your approach due to that factor that you have intimidation by your presence. I'm like, wow.
You intimidating you evil 6'3" white male.
My white is going to shut you down. Like, that was the programming. That was and I didn't have to like take a test and say, yes, I'll do that. It said you have to recognize that this is going to be something that comes up. People are going to be intimidated by you for the simple fact that you are white.
Yeah.
And I could accept that. So people will be intimidated by that. But what I can't accept is I need to adjust my function as a paralegal or representative based on that. That's where I drew my line. I'm like, no way. Like, I'm hired to fulfill a job, and intimidation using the law is part of that. Like, I will sue you. You're breaking these laws. We have recourse and remedies. That's all intimidation. And if someone's intimidated because I'm articulate, I'm knowledgeable, I'm bringing something to the table, great. That's actually part of the service I'm offering. But to tell me that I have to adjust my service based on my race because others may feel intimidated, that's critical race theory. And that came through the law schools. And then those lawyers become judges, and those judges now implement them. And some of these lawyers become lawmakers, and the policies are introduced from board level all the way to our parliament and everything in between. So you can see how this creeped in, and I was a witness to it. And when I asked my fellow students of the paralegal class, hey, did you get this program? Because I was the only white male in that entire class.
You were, yes.
The answer was no, they did not.
Interesting. Interesting.
But anyways, that's where we're headed. So I think DEI, it's the renaming of the critical race theory. And before then, it was affirmative action. And if you go back, this has been a challenge in the industry. And now we're seeing a lot of the effects. License has been denied because of it to a Christian TV program that wants to be on the radio.
Yep, some good conversation here. Becky in our local chat. I hope Leighton is challenging DEI in court. We need to bring that down. We were doing just fine without it. There was no problem needing a fix. It's about a specific narrative and promoting division. Let them fix those that are intimidated. That's their problem. And then you guys are triggering me today. Sorry, Becky.
We love Becky because Becky is very honest and open.
And had to deal with this herself, is it to implement?
On the other side. Yeah, on the other side, because she's an Indigenous woman, right? Yeah. And so is Leighton. Leighton's not an Indigenous woman. He's an Indigenous man. And most of the time, the people that dislike these programs are the ones that they're claiming it's for. Right. So if you're a person of color and you get into a university because of quota, you don't feel good about that. And also, if you're a person of color that get into university based on merit, but they have the program, you're tainted with that too. Like, people are wondering, did you get in because of your skin color versus your brain function? And, it just hurts the people they claim to be helping. That's how you know it's not genuine. It's not actually helping anybody. It's hurting all sides.
Was there anything prior to affirmative action from the Clinton era?
Well, affirmative action has been around since the 60s or so.
60s,
so well before the Clinton. Yeah, because that was supposed to affirmative provide openings for people that were considered minorities, visible minorities, people that were being discriminated against. And that's what the action was. So I think that came in through the 60s when the whole pushback on that stuff was happening.
So generations have seen this, and to some it's their norm, and it's to be expected and should be there. So it's really difficult then to try and fight and, I don't want to say re-educate, but create awareness on the damage it could cause on the flip side of it.
Yeah, and even there was this article, and the media is so bad for this. Like, they're just so bad. The media is racist. There was an article about a woman expressing her frustration. She's a Black woman who took a flight with her husband and her son, and she was frustrated because the passenger beside her son was MAGA.
Mm-hmm.
And throughout the article, it's just so racist. Like, she's like, and she's like a typical white woman and didn't check her privilege. But her beef was that she put on a headset, a noise canceling headset, and her son spoke to the woman.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the flight was done, like, her son wasn't upset or anything like that. It was like, oh, we were speaking. And then the white woman came up to her and said, you have a great son. Like, congratulations, you're doing a good job. He's a very smart young man. And she didn't say it, but she said it in the article, that she wanted to check her privilege and tell her to stay away and how evil she is because she supported Trump and all this kind of stuff. It's like, wow, you got Trump derangement syndrome. You're racist. And the media is putting your story forward as if you're the victim in all of this. Your son did a good thing. He was just chatting with the neighbor. Mm-hmm. The woman didn't harm anybody, but typical white woman was the comment that came out of her. And I should have stood up and said more and put her in her place. Like, for what? Like, literally,
exactly,
for
what? For what? Like, what is, my goodness.
That's racism.
Yeah.
And the media is fueling that by trying to bring her forward as some sort of victim of something. It's just ridiculous. And I'm like, wow, if she really believes this, that somehow her world has been altered because a white woman spoke to her young son and congratulated her and gave her kudos, then she's hurt. Like, there's something wrong with her. And it's likely because the media and her environment, she's believing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing wrong with this woman speaking to her son. Her son wasn't upset. He's not like changing his ideology. Mm-hmm. There wasn't an attempt to do anything like that. They just had a conversation, and she didn't even hear it. She had noise canceling headphones on.
Well, I'm confused. So if she's on a flight with her son and she's got noise canceling, why wasn't she present for her kid? Like, at least have one.
Well, he's 12. He's 12, and it sounds like a good, well-rounded young man who can carry a conversation with adults. Like, we wouldn't have a problem with JJ talking to somebody else.
I don't think we'd have to stop our children having conversations.
Right, and we'd probably get the same comment, like, hey, you got a smart little son here, and stuff like that. But we wouldn't start going, well, that's race-based, or you're a liberal, or anything.
That's weird.
It's just, but the part that I'm highlighting here is, well, she's a racist, and the media is giving her a platform and trying to position her as a victim. And I was reading this, like, wow, this is such a problem. This is a problem. Like, why does this racism exist? We didn't grow up with this, but here it is in Canadian news.
Yeah.
Now, you're mixed. You're not mixed. You're full on Arab.
I'm full on Arab, but I've also lived a very eclectic life because, I've Lebanese descent, but I was born and raised in Nigeria. I was educated in England. So I've lived for a good chunk of my life in a country where I was the minority. And then I lived in a small rural village in England where I was the majority, passing as white.
I love that term, passing as white, because you weren't, but you were visible, the visible part.
And then there was maybe 2 Black families in England, and then my best friend.
In England?
Like
the whole country?
No,
or in your village?
In our little village. Little shout out to Sawtrey, East Anglia. But yeah, and then my best friend was from Mauritius. So I never had an issue with race. I still don't have an issue with race, but I've lived in both places where I've been seen as a majority and a minority. Life is still good, people, if you don't focus on race, really.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, as a white male growing up here, we are targeted. We are lesser than. We are the man. And I learned that early in my education when we learned about this whole affirmative action. Mm-hmm. And I said at that time, I know I was in like grade 3 or 4 because I was very young. I was in Saskatoon. I didn't go to Winnipeg until my early teens. So I was very young. And I said to the teacher, like, isn't this reverse racism? Because what you're doing here is you're highlighting my race as being negative. Isn't that reverse racism? I was called a racist for that. I was brought to the principal's office. Now, in this particular school, that principal didn't follow that ideology, didn't actually support that. So basically explained to me how this is something I have to grow up with and understand, but I wasn't in the wrong. It was a type of reverse racism. So I kind of had that weird lesson. The teacher's telling me I'm privileged and wrong. The principal's saying that's hogwash, but it's something you're going to have to deal with because this is what the world's doing now. And I was very young when I learned that lesson. So I kind of grew up. And of course, I didn't have the opportunity to go to university because I was considered to be from a family of privilege who wouldn't pay for it. There were no programs that would open the door for me in any way, shape, or form, even though my scores were high. I didn't check off any of the other boxes, and this was in Winnipeg. So I didn't have the opportunity to do that. Went on to other things. But I'm not complaining because I still think your merit brings you forward, and you can still make your living and your future based on that. And I worked hard on that. But I certainly ran into this affirmative action and then critical race theory and now DEI. And that's what this episode is about, because it's what Leighton's going to get into, how ridiculous it is, how it's destroying the social fabric. And we even lost a church in Toronto. A famous church got burnt down recently, too. So that'll be talked about as well with Leighton.
And then how you just named 3. So yeah, Beck says it just gets rebranded and improved over time. Improved.
New and improved with that label. And by the way, I have a beef with that. How long can something be new and improved?
Yeah.
Like when you have a candy bar, it's a new and improved. And are you admitting that the previous one was no good? But in either case, yeah, Becky, you're correct. When DEI falls out of favor, when people are done with it, it's going to have another term.
It's going to be something else.
They're going to package it up under another name and keep feeding it to us because it's the Marxist program. It's causing division. It's meant to cause division. It's meant to distract as well, because look, we're focusing on it right now. And it does cause people to get angry with each other and disappointed and frustrated. So it's working. Dialectic, right?
Yes, the dialectics. That was Vlad Tepes speaks about that for sure. Language is very, very important. And even Melanie Bennett speaks about that as well. It's very, very important and key, language.
We got to get her back. Melanie Bennett, the refugee, there's someone that kind of woke up, seen the radicalization, drew a line, said I'm not part of it. We can get those people on, no problem. It's the ones that are still in that mindset that we can't get on.
Which is really weird, and how difficult it is, people, really, to get people on the left, because one of the things I enjoyed about having Melanie on as a guest is because she used to think that way, she's able to explain it. Because in my head, I'm like, why do you think that way? And she explains, this is why and how they're able to think that way. And it's like, wow, it's such an insight. So I'd love to meet someone who still thinks that way, to have a conversation, because I think it could be enlightening for both to have that conversation and not a yelling match saying, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, and such. So I'd love to have someone left-leaning or be on board with certain programs and ideas that I'm personally not, to get an insight, because why are you so strong in your convictions? I'd love to hear that. Like, why? What is that root, that key information you have that is saying, no, this is why I believe this? I'd love to hear it.
Well, we had a small taste of it yesterday with Jack. Not that he's left-leaning, but that how people just believe things. Like, would you prefer a trans child or a dead child? Like that emotional thing is what they will believe. And the reason why you don't get people on is because they can't defend. They can't defend their position.
I mean, we see that sometimes when the whole man on the street and they go to these protests and says, okay, well, why is Trump a fascist? Oh, well, just look at it online. Sure, look at it online, but you're standing here telling me you believe he's a fascist because of ABC. What's your ABC? Tell me. And they can't know, no, we're not going to talk to you now. Why not? If you're so strong in your conviction, which you're entitled to be, good for you. What is that nugget of information that you're putting your hat on to say this? Because of this, I believe it. What is that information? And a lot of, from what I'm seeing online, which of course is the stuff that's selected and posted, I don't know why these people believe what they believe, because they're not sharing that information.
Because it's feelings.
Yeah.
It's feelings. And this is why there's that saying, facts don't care about your feelings, because it's feelings. And
Hey, look, I have feelings. Jason can tell you, I have feelings about stuff, but I do agree. Facts don't care about feelings.
it's the tone.
It's the tone.
But well, that's the problem. Like, do you want a trans child or a dead child? Well, every parent will say, well, I don't want my child to be dead. But the stats didn't support that. And that's what Jack was laying out. He's like, well, look, but when we try and look into that, that's just not the case. In fact, what we find is when males transition to female, they more likely are going to end of life themselves. I want to be careful with YouTube on this.
Yeah, YouTube.
Maybe if I say softly with ASMR. But that's the fact. Like, the fact is, when they transition, they decide or learn that they're sterile, and then those feelings or that support structure that was pushing them is gone. Like we see the detransitioners, that's when, statistically speaking, they're far more likely to go ahead and do that self-process. And that's the facts, but you can't bring that up.
Yeah.
You're transphobe if you say that.
And to be clear, I think it's for both male to female, female to male. They both do that because from my understanding of speaking to people, that they're going through this turbulation in their life and their hormones in the bodies where they're like, I'm just not in the right body. This is not who I want to be. Then they transition. And then it's like, oh darn, I'm now stuck. You've gone to the point of no return. And that is a real driving point to make certain decisions of how they want to go forward. It's very difficult. And I really feel for young women, young teens who are encouraged to go through that process to transition to male, because we are already a bottle of hormones as it is as teenagers. And there is another level that females go through that is more emotional and emotionally led. And once you hit that point of no return, I can't even fathom now how you're feeling. And this is where we need to put the support. This is where we need to assist those who want to detransition, or give them with the aftercare counseling that they need if they've now realized this is not what I want, because it must be awful to wake up and realize, okay, I've done what I think I was meant to do, and I realize now that it wasn't enough or it was wrong, and you're now stuck. So this is where the aftercare counseling support for detransitioners really needs to be there. And from what we're finding out, it's not.
Well, it's illegal. Bill C4 makes that illegal. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can only go one way. It's a one-way road on that one. And you kind of just proved my point there, because the numbers don't support what you just said there. It's not the female to male that are doing that process. It's males to female where there's a big spike, according to the data. Like, I know that we can try and say, hey, look, I understand, or I feel like, but if you look at the data, it's males going to female and then changing their mind and then taking that last step. It's just sad. Okay. It's just sad. But at the end of the day, we're here to try and provide some awareness and bring these kind of things forward
and have conversation. Like, if there's anyone in the chat who's got their 2 cents, which I can see there's been.
we don't have sense in Canada anymore on many fronts. We have nickels and
nickels.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and bring up some stuff while you're looking for that.
Yeah.
So shortly after yesterday's episode, I did a post here. Thanks to Marty for clipping this from one of the Alberta Next Panel discussions. This was Danielle Smith responding to a question about how much money we actually send towards Ottawa. I'm going to quickly play it for you. I know there's a lot of non-Danielle Smith fans out there, and that doesn't matter. What this is about is this is the information that she's sharing. Take it or leave it, however you want. But I certainly found it to be shocking to actually hear them.
What we're talking about tonight is Ottawa over. Do you want to hear the answer? Ottawa overtaxing us. I mentioned that at the beginning of the evening, that our program costs are 70% of all tax dollars. We only collect 40%. Ottawa collects 60%, and then they use political means to transfer it. Alberta, year after year, has $20 to $25 billion that is siphoned out of our system to go to Ottawa so that it can be spent mostly in Quebec, but also in other places that vote Liberal. We have been watching this for years. $600 billion in the last 40 or 50 years that have been taken out of this province. You don't think we might be able to do a little bit more on social spending if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? You don't think we'd be able to cut taxes a bit if those $20 to $25 billion stayed here? It is $5,000 per Albertan that every single year gets transferred out of this province for political reasons so that the Liberals can continue to spend it in places that vote Liberal. That is what is happening in the province and in the country.
Thank you.
So once again, Danielle's making a statement. I got to kind of critique a little bit because yes, $5,000, $20,000 for us, for a family of four, those kind of things. But I didn't like her statement about social spending. She literally said, well, we could do what the Liberals do all over Canada, but here, we could do more of that here. That's social spending. I didn't like that part of it. The cutting of the tax, fine, great.
Healthcare.
But yeah, 20 to 25 billion a year is leaving Alberta, and we're not seeing the benefits of it. And I put a post up, it got some traction, and people are definitely, a little bit surprised to start seeing numbers.
Yeah.
So for every Albertan, $5,000. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to drop this off the screen because two guests showed up and we're ready to go because this is a very important conversation. I invited two of my friends, Leighton Grey. Let's bring him up. Good morning. How are you, Leighton?
Good morning.
Good morning. Sorry about Danielle Smith being on screen when you popped in there, but I got to kind of critique some of her statement there.
No, that was one of her better moments. Although she reminds me of one of my favorite Elvis Presley songs. A little less conversation, a little more action, please.
There you go.
Yeah, I'd like to see some action on that. And but I didn't like that part about more social spending here. It's like that's not what we need. We don't need more of that.
That's kind of what our government is about, though. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, Ottawa shouldn't do it, but we will. So I'll critique her on that part of it. I did like the fact that she put a number out there, and I got a lot of heat for that one. And good morning to Nico. How are you doing, my friend, out in Quebec?
I'm good. You guys?
Good. Do you feel a little guilty that this $5,000 we're talking about might be ending in your province? That's might be where it's headed.
It deserves to go broke.
Yeah, Quebec deserves to go broke.
Quebec and Ontario deserves to go broke. Yeah, they're leeches. We've been living off the back of Alberta for probably as long as I've been alive. So
excellent.
It's about time we get consequences.
No, thanks a lot for joining. You are two of my favorite people. I'm not picking favorites, but you're both on that list because you're both willing to tell the truth, no matter what the consequence is. I've never once seen either one of you bend a knee to anybody. I don't even think your knees bend, quite frankly. And this particular topic is very important to us because we're broadcasters. All of us have our shows. And when the CRTC starts cracking down on radio licenses, this is a really personal one to us because where is this going to stop? A podcast can be shut down if we don't do DEI programming. So where's it going to stop? So Leighton, let me just throw it to you first because it was your post that got my attention yesterday. We all know who's involved here with the license. They actually thought, because I spoke to them a day or so before the decision came out, that they thought it was going to be good. They thought the decision was going to be in their favor because they're taking so much time. But then the news came out, and I was blown away. So Leighton, let's go ahead and talk about what happened there in Saskatchewan.
Well, it's a really troubling situation, and it's really symptomatic of what is happening in our country right now. And just to frame what happened, I'm just going to set it up by talking a little bit about history. I recently watched a documentary about what happened when the Soviets at the end of World War II moved into places like Romania and Czechoslovakia and Bulgaria, what became known as what Sir Winston Churchill termed the Iron Curtain. And what they did is they brought in, through brute force, essentially atheism, and they criminalized Christianity. And the question is, and it wasn't for religious reasons, it was for purely political reasons, because they knew that Christianity is a faith that conflicts with total allegiance and really ownership of everything, including human beings, by the state. And so the documentary I watched was about a Lutheran pastor in Romania who was actually tortured because he was handing out Bibles, because he was holding private Christian meetings. He was not even preaching in his church anymore. He was having private Christian, sessions, prayer sessions in his home with his wife. And so flash now on into Canada, and what's happening in Canada right now, people need to understand, is what's called soft authoritarianism. So they're trying to get us to the same point that the Soviets wanted, but they're doing it through surreptitious means. And one of these means is the CRTC. The CRTC, this is the Canadian Radio and Television Commission. They are ostensibly, they're intended to be an institution that is there to protect Canadian culture and actually to protect us from, for example, let's say communist China owning all of our airwaves and broadcasting propaganda and shaping our culture and our minds. That's ostensibly what they are. They're there to protect us from all that. But like many institutions in Canada and indeed in the West, what's happened is the CRTC has been hollowed out and their power has been increased, but now they're actually doing evil. They're actually doing the very thing that they were designed not to do. So what happened with Talk Truth? Well, Talk Truth is Corey and Alan Huntsberger. Alan Huntsberger is a longtime pastor, over 50 years in Canada. He's really a pioneer in Canadian Christian broadcasting. He's been a radio personality. He's been a traveling preacher. He helped to start the Miracle Channel. And his son, Corey, works with him and really is the marketing mind of the show. And they have a very successful program, as you know, Jason, on the Daystar Network, which is where my show is going, actually. But so they've been very successful, sometimes over 10 million downloads a month of their show. And there's a Christian broadcaster in Saskatchewan who wants to sell. He wants to sell. He's been doing it for over 3 decades. And he wants to ensure that that broadcasting content that's going out to his audience, that continues, that Christian broadcasting continues. But unfortunately, the CRTC has been granted so much power, so much license by the federal government, that he can't sell his radio station to someone unless it gets CRTC approval. And in fact, they changed the regulations now so that you can't even grandfather the license. So what happened to the Talk Truth people is they had to actually apply to the CRTC for their own license. And what they were met with are these woke requirements that they could not get their own license unless they agreed to sign on to the diversity, inclusion, equity, unless they made a commitment there, unless they said that they were going to have programming concerning critical race theory, indigeneity, LGBTQ, and a whole host of things that are quite offensive to Christian morality, and really would destroy the whole messaging of Christian broadcasting. Of course, Alan and Corey quite properly made pledges to diversity, real diversity, diversity of thought, that they were not going to discriminate against anyone on the basis of such things. But that was not enough for the CRTC. So what the CRTC is they said no. They said no, not only to Talk Truth, but to this Christian broadcaster. What they essentially said is, you can't sell your radio station to anyone unless they meet with our criteria. And the essence of that is they're trying to shut down Christian broadcasting, because CRTC has made it very clear they're not going to permit him to sell the radio station to anyone who's going to continue to do Christian broadcasting. That radio station is going to be a beacon for the state's religion, the state's atheistic religion, which, just like in the Iron Curtain, is going to send their message out to the world, the message that they want to have Canadians hear, which is really antithetical and increasingly oppositional and aggressively oppressive of Christianity. And here's the really frightening part, the most frightening part of it all. And I know you've talked to our mutual friend, Bruce Party, about this. Bruce Party has a great line. He said, people in Canada, they have a concept of the law, and especially the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And it's an illusion. What they think the law is not what the law is. And this is a great example, boots on the ground example. So all of us on this call right now, people listening, are probably under the impression that the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is a statement of Canadian values, and that it protects individual rights and freedoms from oppressive action of the state. I think we could all agree that that's a fair definition of what the charter was intended to be when people like Brian Petford sat down and, over 40 years ago and set pen to paper and gave us the charter. But what it actually is now is an engine for denial of those rights. And there's proof of this everywhere. The journalistic work that you did with the Coots for, Jason, is a great example of this. What Tamara Leach and Chris Barber are facing right now is an example of this. What Sean Foyt, when he tried to tour across Canada to express his faith in song, is an example of this. And what the charter is being used is actually being used against. We're finding out that those of us who think that we have freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom of mobility, the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, are finding out that we don't have those rights. Okay, the people who have those rights are a group of U of T students in Ontario who didn't like Mr. Ford's climate plan. 7 students shut down the entire climate plan because, of course, the court said that climate change poses an existential threat to the safety and security of Canadians. Okay, they actually found that. They had no evidence before them to support that conclusion, but they found that. Or another Ontario court which said that a homeless encampment that the city of Waterloo wanted to shut down because it was posing real harm to the community, that could not be shut down because these homeless people living in these encampments, many of whom are not even legal Canadians, they have a constitutional right to shelter under Section 7 of the Charter. It's absurd, but those are the people who have charter rights. Now, coming back to the CRTC decision, the horrifying part is this. The CRTC issues this decision. They recognize that they're violating the constitutional rights, freedom of expression, freedom of religious expression by the Huntsbergers. They recognize that they're doing that. But then, because they've been granted the authority to do it, they then review the constitutionality of their own offending decision. And they find under Section 1 that what they've done here is a reasonable limit, because you see, they have the choice. They have the choice to comply. They're just choosing not to comply, and that there's no right to do Christian broadcasting in Canada. It's a privilege that can be revoked at the fiat of government. So we have this horrifying situation where the CRTC, a group of unelected bureaucrats, have been given this power, the massive power of the state, to deny freedoms, to deny freedom of expression and of religious expression. And then they're granted the bureaucratic authority to review their own legal decision. But it gets worse. You would think, okay, well, that's a terrible decision. We'll just appeal. The avenues of appeal are extremely narrow. And actually, what the only thing they'd have to do is something called judicial review. You probably know what that is, Jason, but for your audience, it's actually a more narrow standard of review than an appeal is, because you have to show that the CRTC didn't follow their own rules, that they made some procedural error, or that they got the law wrong. And of course, looking at the way judges have been interpreting the charter in this country, the likelihood that this decision can be reviewed legally by a judge, especially a federal court judge, is somewhere between slim and none, and slim just left town. So what it amounts to here is a fundamental denial of religious freedom. It also interferes with the basic freedom of contract. Remember, and there's a case called Bazin from 2014 in the Supreme Court, which has been upheld many times, which is a good decision for a change in Canada. It says that it recognizes and affirms, the sanctity of contract between two parties. And most of our law of contract is actually judge-made law. It's not statutory law. And of course, the common law has done a very good job of this. And it says that there's a standard of good faith in contract. Well, the CRTC is even violating that Supreme Court decision by wading in and essentially vitiating a contract between two parties who've agreed to sell a radio station. So all around, it's just a very, very frightening thing. And, it sort of illustrates, something that when we see all this oppression of Christianity in our country, it illustrates a famous quotation from G.K. Chesterton, who said, we have lost our national instincts because we have lost the idea of the Christendom from which all of the nations came. He says, in freeing ourselves from Christianity, we have only freed ourselves from freedom. And I think this is, not to put too fine a point on it, but that's really what we're seeing. And we're seeing it manifested in many ways right now. Just the other day, it didn't get much notice, but another historic Christian church in Toronto was burned down. And, it just goes on and on. But I think it's very hard. It's very difficult to argue against the reality today in Canada that Christianity is under attack. And I'm glad that you have Nico on here, because, it's Quebec used to be the most church-going province in our country. And people used to travel to Quebec. I know a generation before, they used to travel to Quebec because they loved visiting Quebec for that reason, because they were a nation of people that were really steeped in Christianity, and it got expressed in every part of Quebec life. And now Quebec is the most secular place in Canada. It's one of the most secular places in the Western world. In fact, it's so secular. I have friends who are Christian missionaries, and they actually send Christian missionaries into Quebec because Christianity, the pulse of Christianity, is so faint there. And it's all due to the action of the state that I've been describing that's going on in Canada, has been happening in Quebec for much, much longer. And in fact, I know a young pastor who is at McGill. This is very clever. What they do is they go to parties, because Montreal Nico will know this, but Montreal is a real college town. There's over 250,000 college students there at any given time. And of course, college students, being college students, they party a lot. And so what this pastor does is they go to the parties, and when the kids are partying and they're drinking and they're dancing and everything, and they get thirsty, and he's there with a couple other people with fresh water. And when the kids come over to get fresh water, they engage them in conversations about Christ. And some of these kids, many of them, he said the vast majority of them, have never heard anything about the Bible. They've never even heard of Jesus. And this is a real travesty because of what Quebec was. Because Quebec what really was part of the Christian heartbeat of our country, and the Christianity that existed in Quebec really shaped Canada. A lot of what we have in our Constitution, our values, people don't realize this because they only know the Quebec of the post-René Lévesque. They don't know the original Quebec that was so important in shaping Canada as a Christian nation. And so it's great that Nico's on here, because I think if we're going to do anything to save Christianity in Canada, I think Quebec is a great place to start. But that's the essence of what's happened with the CRTC. So I'll throw it back to you, Jason, for discussion, and maybe Nico has some comments as well. Thank you.
Well, the light is definitely finding you there. So thanks for bringing the light.
Sorry.
I appreciate that a lot. And yeah, I'm going to go to Nico next. Nico, you've already been under the attack for the big 3 C's. So Caucasian, Christian, and conservative. And now content creators added to that list. And it's getting bad. It's getting really bad. My skin's crawling as I'm listening to Leighton, because he's nailing it all. They gave themselves permission to use Section 1. That's horrible. A judicial review in a federal court by a federal judge on a federal agency. Good luck with that one. The avenues here are slim to none and slim left town, like Leighton's saying here. There is really no way to fight this one. And we also see Quebec announcing things like this. Just yesterday, Quebec plans to table bill banning prayer in public. And my comment on that one, because I genuinely feel this way, was I have a few questions. Will it only be for Christians? Will it include the radical sexualized religions as well? Will churches be designated as public or street prayer all of a sudden? And then also last, good luck enforcing this. A religious confrontation is precisely what they want. God bless. Because that's where we're headed with this. So you've heard what Leighton had to say. Quebec is on the forefront of destroying religion all over the place. And do we have a safe place left?
I just want to correct you on what you just showed there, because I posted about this morning, and I'm going to speak about it in more details on the show today. But the attack is directly versus Muslims. He said, Legault.
I was curious about that.
Oh, no, he said it. If I can share my screen, I can share you. I actually.
Yeah, go ahead, share your screen. I've also seen a news article, Nico, where they're showing Jews. They're actually showing Jews in the picture when they're talking about this. So the media has taken it one way. and maybe your legislator is taking it up a different way.
Well,
go.
if you can share my screen, there you go. So I posted this morning, and if you see, it's saying Legault is trying to send a very clear message to Islamists. He said it plain and simple back in December. The bill that they're trying to pass is not targeting Christians directly, because Christians are already not allowed to pray in the street. We get arrested for doing this. We can't even look at guys like Derek Reimer in Alberta that got arrested time and time and time again just for preaching, not blocking. And we're not talking about blocking Bloor and Yonge in Toronto here, the busiest intersection in Canada. We're talking about on the corner, on the sidewalk. They can even preach. So we know that this is not targeted directly at Christians, that it's targeted at Islamists, but that's still going to prevent us from praying. Of course it is. Of course it is. They're selling the idea that you're going after them, but at the same time, how do you go after a movement that is not there to pray? They have all the mosques that they need, just like we have all the churches that we need. But this is a power play. They do this in public. They block intersections without permit under police security, police protection, because they can. That's a show of force. Look at what happened all over Europe. That's how they start. They're just telling us we're here to stay. We're not going anywhere, and we're letting it happen. So what's the solution? Is that the solution? I don't know, and I don't claim to know the answer, because there's going to be a clash. No matter what, there's going to be a clash between Christians and Islam, and unfortunately, that's a repeat of history. But to go back to what Leighton was saying, though, because I know you guys are making it sound like there's nothing that we can do, but at the end of the day, guys, we cannot play by the rules if they're not going to play by the rules. A license for broadcasting does not enable you from broadcasting. I'm a sales engineer by trade. I live in technology. You can install your AM radios or your FM radios yourself and start broadcasting. Nobody can block you. It's just that by law, you need to respect the CRTC, but we might be at a point, and by might, I mean we're really at a point. I just don't want to do it on your show to say that that's what we should do. So don't listen to what I'm saying. I'm just a crazy French guy from Montreal. But maybe, just maybe, we are at a point that we need to stop playing by the rules. If they're not going to respect the charter, if they're not going to apply their own rules, why do we listen? Maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe we need to put, because I've thought about putting an AM or an FM antenna before and just start broadcasting. Who are they gonna, how are they gonna stop me? They're gonna arrest me? No problem. That's the Streisand effect. Give me all the publicity in the world, I can handle it, and I will make you look stupid for going after me. Like, if you look at how people have overthrown government in the past, make fun of them. Expose how stupid they look and just keep on pointing it, because no matter how they go at it, they're going to expose how stupid they are. Make fun of them. And that's a perfect way. We just need a martyr that's ready to do this. And to me, this is the perfect opportunity to just say, how about we just put those antennas and start broadcasting, see what happens? They don't want to play by the rules. We need to stop playing by the rules too.
Yeah. This is that's a great point. And actually, and this is happening kind of in Nova Scotia right now. Not that he's doing it for Christian reasons, but, you know, Mr. O'Keefe, the muckraker, famous American broadcaster, it's kind of shameful that he's the one who's going into the Nova Scotia woods. And he's actually doing exactly what Nico just said. He's saying, you know, this is peaceful resistance. This is just like what they did in India with Gandhi, where the people just laid on the railroads, or what Martin Luther King had people do in the Deep South during their, you know, their civil revolution in the United States, where they just, you know, would stand in front of buses and shut down public transportation. I think Nico's onto something, and it's kind of shameful that an American, a foreigner, has to come to Canada and show us how to do it. But I think that is the right idea. When we have unjust laws, Nico's quite right. Historically, the way to do it, if you're acting in faith and you're acting in, you know, from the point of view of moral rectitude, what we have to do is just act out our faith, and say, no, we're not. We're going to find other ways. And when I was talking before about what happened in the Iron Curtain, I neglected to mention, this ties into Nico's point. Well, you know, the Christianity went underground, and people did exactly what Nico said. They had off-grid radio, they had underground prayer meetings. So it's shocking to the system to think that this could happen in Canada, you know. But here we are. And, coming back to my earlier point, I neglected to mention, a lot of people don't realize this. Our national anthem was written in 1880 by a Quebecer. And the original lyrics are in French, and they're quite religious. There was an English translation that was done by a Toronto doctor named Richardson, and these are the words. This is sort of a loose translation of the original lyrics of "O Canada." It says, "O Canada, our father's land of old, thy brow is crowned with leaves of red and gold. Beneath the shade of the holy cross, thy children own their birth. No strains thy glorious annals gloss, since our valor shield thy hearth. Almighty God, on thee we call. Defend our rights, forfend this nation's thrall." So, obviously, if people who try to argue that Canada was not a Christian country need to go and check the references. And as I said earlier, a big part of the reason why Canada was a Christian country was because of Quebec. And so it is, and I agree with Nico as well about the real intent of that law. Although it may be ostensibly aimed at Islam, we know that that is going to apply to all religions, and principally what they're after is Christianity. There can't be any question about that, especially when we see what happened in Montreal when Sean Foyt tried to go through there, and the mayor, the smoke bomb, and the mayor denying him the ability to put on his concert. So these are things. These are when we see things like anti-Semitism, when we see cancellation of Christian concerts, when we see denials of licenses and things like this, these are bellwethers in our society of intolerance, and they're telling us that something is really, really deeply wrong with our country. And we see it because really, even though they're making laws that are targeted at religion, did you notice that we don't have any political leaders who are talking about God? None of them. Right? Where's Pierre Poilievre? Pierre Poilievre should be he should be moving to the right as fast as he can, right? To occupy a space in the political spectrum that is totally vacant. And I think if he did that, it would be incredible what you would see in Canada. I think that is his pathway. If he's ever going to be prime minister, I think that's his pathway. But instead, what does he do? He goes to Battle River, runs in a by-election, and then he goes on leftist Gen Z podcasts, based out of Toronto, and they send him softballs about how he's against how he's against the Liberals' climate policy, without mentioning that his own government, when he was a cabinet minister under Mr. Harper, they signed us on to Agenda 2030. They signed us on to the climate accords. These are examples of really the hypocrisy that's going on in our country. But I think the message that people who watch this show, who follow Nico, and who follow Grey Matter, the word I'm trying to get out to them is, look, wake up. This is under attack. This is essential to our country. Christianity and freedom are inextricably tied, and this is why Christianity is constantly under attack everywhere and throughout history. Because, as G.K. Chesterton said, that there is only liberty in that environment, in a Christian, quote unquote, Christian culture, not a Christian theocracy, but in a Christian culture. And even very, very famous atheists acknowledge this. Christopher Hitchens, for example, said this publicly. I want to live in a culturally Christian society. Why? Because that's the most tolerant society that has ever existed. And yet Christians are painted as bigots. John Locke, who's the father, of liberalism, he famously wrote, "Liberty is not doing whatever you want; it's being free to choose what is right." And unfortunately, that is something that's core to our understanding of liberty and democracy and freedom in our country. But it's the essence of that is being lost by creation of laws that really are designed to destroy religious freedom, to destroy free choice, and just permit people to engage in licentiousness, which is very destructive to any sense of human meaning and to having a meaningful life. And that's why we have such a state in Canada right now, throughout the country, of, I think, real despondency and a lack of hope that Nico mentioned. So I think it's just important for people to understand these attacks on traditional religion like Judaism and Christianity, and even Islam, to the extent that they're getting some of the flack. It's all aimed at one thing, and that is total control and authoritarian control by a government that's exercising soft authoritarianism. So we have to be very, very watchful of this. And as Nico said, we have to walk out our faith. It's not enough just to say, oh, this is terrible that this happened. You got to get up out of your chair and do something about it. And we can all do something. It's just a matter of, we all have personal power. We all have something we can offer our communities. But there's too many Canadians that are just online complaining about things, and they don't realize that really they have the power to change all of it.
So, Nico, your idea there, could the churches in Canada, local broadcast like they used to with the movie screens when you went to a drive-in, like FM, local, maybe connect together, Starlink, they need something high up like a cross to kind of broadcast from. And then we'll see if CRTC literally goes into a church and pulls down the equipment. Like, is this kind of a call to our pastors out there? The tech is the easy part. It's who's going to put it up is going to be the hard part.
I've been saying this for years as I've traveled 30 states in the US and a lot of them down south. We need, as Christians, to start acting our faith. Because the biggest problem I see everywhere is lukewarm Christians. And then you got a guy like me that's been a Christian for 3-4 years, that's been rebaptized a couple of years ago, that just calls them out outright to their faces to say, what the beep are you guys doing? You guys are supposed to be leading others, and they don't have the balls to talk about things that matter, like the trans agenda, for example. They don't even have the balls to address something that is a 90-10 issue that anybody with a mind, anybody that can think, knows that a woman cannot have a penis. They don't even talk about this. So how do you expect them to start installing antennas on the top of their churches and start broadcasting when they don't even have the courage to speak to their own people about what really matters? Because I've said this before and I'll say it again. Jesus, if he came back today, would not be considered a nice guy. He never was a nice guy. I use the word ASSHOLE to describe him because that he wasn't there to make you feel good about yourself. He didn't really care about your feelings. He was there to tell you the truth, not your truth, the truth. If it hurts your feeling, check the mirror. But he did it out of love, and that's what we need to start doing. And Christians, in my opinion, are too lukewarm. They're complacent. They're lazy. They like to go to church on Sundays for a couple hours and they think they're Christians. Yet they won't do what needs to get done outside in the street to make sure that we are closer to Christ. And funny enough, Leighton, I have the translation that you were talking about. I have the original text by Adolphe Basile Routier. This is what I sung my whole life. Like, I'm reading the lyrics. I'm like, of course, that's the original one. It talks about carrying your cross. It talks about faith. It talks about fighting. It talks about protecting your home. 4 things we don't do in Canada. We have no castle law. People have no faith. People are not courageous anymore. And people are not ready, even Christians, to carry the cross. How sad is that? That's 100, let's call it 200 years ago.
Yeah. And, Quebec, as I mentioned earlier, Quebec, you could argue, was the Christian heartbeat of Canada. Quebec was much more faithful and Christian originally than Ontario was. And here we have today in Canada a situation where the federal government seems to have gone to great lengths to vilify Quebec, to make everybody dislike Quebec. You said that Quebec was a welfare state. It should go broke, leeching off of Canada. Well, what a turnaround. Here's Quebec was the Christian heartbeat of Canada. And now, how do Albertans, how do Westerners see Quebec? It gives you an idea of how there's more of a grand design to destroy the country. By what's happened in Quebec has had a massive impact on the entire country. The people who love Canada should understand we can't have a Canada without Quebec. And I don't think we can have a Canada without a Christian Quebec. And because that's what our country was founded on. Quebec is one of the founding nations of Canada, and what's going on in Quebec affects the entire country. And this is why Albertans are saying, we've got to get out of here because, that Christian heartbeat doesn't exist anymore. We don't seem to have anything in common with Quebec. when Quebec was a Christian society, Alberta had a lot in common with them because Alberta was the Western Bible Belt. Okay, maybe there was Protestant and Catholicism, but we were still Christians. We were still worshiping the same God, right? Now that's not the same. And Nico, you're so right. This cost of discipleship, people need to understand. You're so right about what you said about Christ, and it's not easy being a Christian. You have to carry a cross. A famous, Christian evangelist J.C. Ryle, he wrote this. He said, "True Christianity will cost a man the favor of the world. Will cost a man the favor of the world. He must be content to be thought ill of by man if he pleases God. He must count it no strange thing to be mocked, to be ridiculed, slandered, or persecuted, and even hated." So you're just bang on there. And so many people are afraid, even churches. I'll give you an example. I've been trying like crazy to get a class action going against the government of Canada because CRA is removing, you might be aware of this, you guys, but CRA is removing the charitable status of churches in this country. This is going to be disastrous for churches all over the country who rely on this to be financially viable. Churches are struggling right now anyway. And I can't get any pastors to come forward and be a representative plaintiff to put their face on a class action that is going to affect every single church in Canada. That's an example. We're talking about, let's call them rank and file Christians. Let's talk about the churches. The churches have not stepped up to the plate. And this goes all the way back to COVID, where we saw pastors being jailed. And James Coates was one of the fine pastors that I was blessed to be able to represent during COVID. And I remember having a conversation with him when he was on trial. We were walking around Edmonton, and we had just stopped and talked with a street preacher. And he said, "Leighton," he says, "I just can't understand why the churches are not stepping up and fighting back against this COVID thing. It's so obvious that the church right now is under attack, that this COVID lockdowns, that the churches were targeted because the church is the core, it's the pillar of a free and democratic society." And he was so right. Now he's the exception. I mean, he's a wonderfully committed Christian man, but unfortunately, he is the exception. And most of the churches are not stepping up to the challenge that they're facing right now.
Well, thank you a lot, Leighton and Nico. We do have to run. It is the end of our hour here. We got to get to
Great meeting you, Nico. God bless you and your work.
And both of you. Yeah, we're going to talk after. We have a lot of mutual friends. Yeah, we have a lot of mutual friends. And maybe if we do this, the call sign should be CRTC, Christian Television Radio Consortium. Let's go ahead and take that as well. But look, let's have another conversation. We have a lot of mutual friends. There's something good brewing here. And maybe we'll set up the towers in Nova Scotia Woods as a starting point.
Yeah. I love your new logo, Jason. I just want to say, I think that's cool. I love that tea and coffee.
Tea and coffee. That's
Paula and Jay.
Well, we're going to talk soon, okay? So I'll be in touch with both of you, and let's have this conversation continue. We definitely have to continue this.
Thank you.
God
bless both of you.
Okay, great long weekend.
Yeah,
you too. Yeah.
Happy Alberta Day, Leighton. Take care. All right, folks, look, this is a big problem. We had two great men on here, Christian, conservative. It's under attack. The churches, we saw this during COVID. This is nothing new. This is something we're going to continue talking on while we can before they shut down even podcasters. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to get this out. There's going to be a lot more conversation around this particular subject because we know the people behind this. It's horrible what's happening to Christian TV and Christian messages. They wouldn't do this to a mosque, I guarantee you that. And they wouldn't try and force other religions to go ahead and talk about subjects that they don't align with or believe in. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, I'm kind of motivated. We have Starlink. We're in the middle of nowhere. We have our own power grid. Maybe we'll have our own FM at some point. By the way, I do have a radio license. As a pilot, I do have a CRTC broadcast license, but it's not a big one. It's a local one. But anyways, let's have some more conversations.
Speaking of which, announcement.
Oh yeah, I won't be able to go to Ottawa. Thank you very much, Paula, for reminding that. So those, Melissa, Crystal, Brenda, I'm sorry, I won't be able to go to Ottawa. Too much on the go. I got to catch up, not just on the show, but around here. We got to get ready for winter. And we just can't make it work. So thank you to those that invited me to a dinner and hang out. I just can't make it. But Donald Best will be bringing all of that information. He's going to be coming on the show every single day, giving us a 10-minute breakdown of what's going on. So stay tuned. We'll cover the sentencing. but I won't be able to make it for Detective Alan Gruce. Sorry.
Yep. But thanks for all the great conversation in the chat as well. Lots of people agreed with Nico and Leighton. Melissa McKee, we love you. Great to see you in
Is
the
she
chat.
there in
as well.
chat?
She
Melissa,
was.
sorry, I won't be seeing you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, thanks for everyone who participated. It is an interesting and hot subject because, yes, it's our rights, freedoms, freedom to worship. So very, very important.
Let them worship.
Yeah, exactly. Let them worship. Well, everyone have a fantastic long weekend if you're in Alberta, but we'll still see you on Monday morning anyway.
Oh, yeah. And Monday, we'll see a lot of people near Alberta.
Yep.
There's going to be a big event there at the Whistle Stop. We'll be there. Okay, everybody, have yourself a great day. Sorry, we've got to rush. We love you all very much, and God bless.